In just the last kind of 8 to 10 minutes that we have, I'm just going to invite the panellists back up onto the stage, maybe just for some final reflections before we close out. But thank you very, very much for all of that engagement. It's interesting, Tom, that probably in the limited time that we have, the one issue we didn't really get to was about communications. And in fact, whatever guise it's in, whether it's consumer behaviour, whether it is school and education, that was actually probably the dominant concurrent theme that ran through a lot of the discussions.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I thought ran through the discussions was, in some cases, the need for cultural change. But that's difficult to do. I mean, maybe looking forward, if we could get to the point where we could agree on the importance of certain key issues, and such that they don't become the subject of political disagreement anymore, and therefore they can be tackled over a long period. I mean, in my world of food and nutrition, in the last 15 years, I think there's been a very substantial agreement that investment in early childhood nutrition is of such importance that it really should be embedded. Now, I'm mainly talking about developing countries, but to some extent the same principle applies. Some of these really important things should just be accepted by society, and then government gets on with doing them. I do think we come back, though, to having the value of having, an important, well-functioning political system. I mean, that is ultimately, I think, going to be of central importance.
Just being seriously stress tested
yeah.
across the world, including Europe. But
so far, I think here in Ireland, it's broadly speaking working. And with that, the importance of, and this is where communication does come back in, of an open economy, or an open society with interest groups being able to express themselves, and a free press. I mean, these are some of the really fundamental things, I think, that we just have to be, in the world that we're living in at the moment, we have to continue to be very attentive to.
And some of the things that we perhaps take for granted here that may not apply elsewhere. What for you, Amory, were sort of the big key things you were taking away when you were eavesdropping in on the conversations around the table?
Yeah, like education came up quite a bit, okay? And I'm torn about education. Personally, this didn't come from the groups. They were all pro-education because, we're all busy individuals. You know the information, but we live in a busy world. We are consumers, okay? We're greedy, We're new rich in the Irish society, so we want to spend and we want to prosper. So what's going to actually control those behaviour? And I'm not saying I'm a proponent of a totalitarian regime, but it does need controls. But then there was the piece about the grassroots, that's actually really important. The town hall, that you do get people motivated, that they feel they own it rather than they're being told. That would be actually critical for change. And again, I agree the comment there about the young generation. Yeah, pre-10, they're idealists. I have a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old, and the long showers 100% and couldn't care less. So it is. The education came up a lot, but another one as well is that it's quite fragmented, and who owns this? Does it need a national strategy? We're very good at writing strategies and strategies within strategies and policies within policies, but we're, on a European level, we're very poor at action, and we've no metrics. So if you can't measure it, you can't monitor it, you can't change it. So that would be critical. So does it need that joint up agency? But there's always risk with one taking ownership. So we're not coming up with the vision, but it is like a multitude of things. The one thing though as well, I'm not sure, I think it was Geraldine had mentioned about the road safety. And was that education or was it actually penalties? Well,
I thought that was really interesting, wearing my old legal editor hat and having covered the road safety changes and looking at that. And for me, it was a combination of things. There was the penalties, increased visibility. resources into Garda Síochána. There was the cultural change required, not just in society, but also amongst the judiciary and amongst the legal profession. So there was a huge education element. There was a huge marketing element to it. But it was so interesting to see how in a short period of time we went from someone maybe getting into a car with 2 or 3 pints where you wouldn't even consider.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even consider it now. And Garrett, it kind of seems to me that it, maybe because I think what was so interesting what Jillian and her table were saying is that Michael Liebrick was discussing this last week when he travelled to Dublin, that sometimes, you know, those extremes would go between pessimism and optimism. And sometimes if only the message is negative, people are paralysed. They kind of feel disempowered, Garrett. And I was interested just in your own sort of eavesdropping, that kind of balance about the buy-in, because there are so many actors. There are so many actors.
Yeah, and I think on some of the tables we spoke about the learnings from COVID, and COVID was the crisis was in front of you. So there was acknowledgement that you have a problem. You were given the tools. Granted, you could argue over what was the most effective way, but Joe Public was given. You were given the tools to do something about it, and the motivation to action, I suppose, was the proximity of the risk. If I don't do this, there's a risk that either I'll get sick or someone close to me will get sick. Very clear. On climate, and I think one of the 300 seconds people made the pitch, they said you need to acknowledge there's a problem, you need to be given the tools to do something about it, and you need the motivation to act. And when you look at those 3 things, I think we only have the first one. And even the first one, if you look in the States, is not. Yeah. So I think awareness and acknowledgement that we have a problem is clear in Ireland, positive. Toolkit to do about it. I think with respect, I heard a lot about recycling. Recycling is important, and it's no more important than my industry. If we don't get old boxes back, we can't make new ones. But in the overall scheme of things, that's not going to solve. You know, we're talking about the heating, we're talking about the grid. You know, there's much bigger impact items to be done. But society isn't aware. What can I do as an individual? What can I do as a company that has the biggest impact? And then the last part, what is going to motivate me to change?
Or what can I do to demand action of the big actors who can really make a difference? Pete, some final thoughts.
If I can just follow that, there was one point made that one of the tables was the role the media plays, and that often it's just like clickbait on the telly to get the worst out of people. Everybody's coming in there with an agenda, an opinion, how best to position it, rather than being solution orientated. So that would have been the first table I was at, which I thought was very valid. So
and yet all of them in the last 3 to 5 years. The Irish Times, The Independent, my former home, RT, all of them now have climate correspondents. So there is even, I think, a realisation kind of finally that is a specialist area that needs to be looked after. I should say, as someone who broadcasts and who writes, my goodness, you don't want to write about climate or write about this because the level of opposition that comes in. Coordinated opposition that comes in. There is a very strong voice against, and it's one of those areas that comes under attack all of the time. But JP, finally, maybe some thoughts that you picked up as you were listening in.
Well, I think the town hall idea and the whole idea of social cohesion, like if we have to move quick and try and achieve what we're planning to achieve, we all need to move together. I don't know how you can do that, but we need to have those kind of town halls, get everyone on board. You can kind of see that with local area development plans. I'm not sure that people in the areas fully understand when the council are developing them, and then when the developer comes along then and starts building as per the area development plan, people are all up in arms about it. So it is probably a lot of communication, and I think our national broadcaster probably could do a lot more and maybe have these debates more often to try and get buy-in from people.
What I was really struck by was at the table in the centre, we're talking about, and it's something you're very conscious of, who's not in the room, whose voices are we not hearing, are we talking about it and talking to people, or rather than engaging them fully. And it's, for me, just some reflections, having facilitated the panel and listened to all of you. I think really struck by what you said, Anne-Marie, about how the challenges of today are the revenue generating opportunities of the future, and there's no doubt there are huge opportunities that lie ahead. But I think what's really missing is, again, Tom, what you were saying, it's not really the tools or the technology or the intrinsic capacity. The gaps really lie in who takes ownership of it, who kind of leads out on it. But JP was talking about the solidarity and the need to communicate at all levels. And then I think finally the investment piece, not just strictly in terms of finance, but who is going to own and lead out on this, and will the big corporations, will big industry pay their share of that, the burden of the change. But I think, still a lot to be done in terms of implementation and delivery. But in those wild swings between extreme pessimism and optimism, after this conversation and the solutions that were forthcoming, I think I've swung back to the optimistic end of the spectrum today. So listen, we really, really thank you for your participation. We will be collecting it all together. Just my last thing for me is to thank Jillian and the Enterprise Committee and everyone here at the RDS events team and all the production. But to Anne-Marie, to Garrett, to JP and to Tom, thank you very much. And if you've a little bit of time, why not nip next door and support Adam Vuttermer as well. So thank you very, very much, and safe home this evening.